When you say you're going to Dubrovnik, these four things come up every time: the famous city walls walk, the stunning old town area of Dubrovnik, the Game of Thrones locations, and the real infamous historical events that this ancient city has endured. Now, we share information on all of these with you, plus, we give you some great hints about staying in this medieval city. Stay listening to the end to hear how we snagged the best table at the sought after Panorama restaurant and the most unusual bar we've ever been to. To say we were blown away by Dubrovnik is a total understatement. It is one of those places that is so special and unique that you just want everyone to go and experience it. So please enjoy this episode. And if you want to see all the pictures that we took in Dubrovnik, then click the link in the podcast description on the player you are listening on now. Good morning, Lyle. How are you today?
Spectacular, thanks, Leonita.
As I said in the intro, we are in Dubrovnik today, and we've been excited about doing this podcast for a while. Couldn't wait to get there to do it. Hey,
Yeah, it is the most unique place I've ever been.
yeah, it's incredible, and not only is it unique as in the history and all that sort of stuff, but just it's so pretty as well. Like just such a gorgeous place to wander around. But we'll get to all that in a little while. We're actually in Croatia. Is Dubrovnik? No.
Dubrovnik is a city in southern Croatia, fronting the Adriatic Sea. It's known for its distinctive old town, encircled with massive stone walls, completed in the 16th century.
Yeah, that's what it's known for.
Yeah.
Say Dubrovnik, city walls, yeah.
Its well-preserved buildings range from the Baroque St. Blaise Church to Renaissance Sponser Palace and the Gothic Rector's Palace.
And if you look at the map of Croatia, Dubrovnik is basically on the coast, right down the bottom.
Yeah.
So
Now,
very close to Montenegro.
Very close.
Yes.
In 1979, the city of Dubrovnik was added to the list of UNESCO World Heritage Sites.
When was that?
1979.
I'm surprised that they left it so long, to be honest. But anyway.
Well, I don't know when the actual heritage
UNESCO thing
site started, so
good question.
I'd say it'd be one of the first.
Yeah, it has to be.
You would think. In recognition of its outstanding medieval architecture and fortified town. Now,
it doesn't have the biggest population, does it?
No, the inside the town there's 1,500.
That's the inside the old city.
Yeah, the old city. Yeah, 1,557. But like the total urban area have about 41,562. I think it's about the third biggest city, maybe.
So when you're in Dubrovnik, there, as we're saying, there's the old city, and you can stay in there like we did, and we'll tell you about our apartment next. But there's also, you can just stay outside the city walls and come into the old city for day trips and to do the history tour walks and that sort of thing as well, can't you?
Yeah. I think
if we went back, I would do that. I think I would stay outside the city walls and come back in, because everywhere in the old city is basically upstairs, which is okay, but I would rather be probably down a bit lower.
Well, I think there's over 5,500 steps in Dubrovnik itself, in the old city.
Yeah.
So everywhere, as you said, everywhere you're going to stay in the old city, you're going to be climbing stairs.
Well, you're going to talk about the main street later, but the Dubrovnik old city is surrounded by walls. It's got one big main street up the middle, and from there everything goes upwards. So there's only that one sort of flat area when that leads through to the port area. Now, before we went to Dubrovnik, we were on Hvar, the island, and we caught a ferry. We went from Hvar to Dubrovnik, and it was about 3.5 hours.
Yeah, 3.5 hours.
But we didn't care. It's beautiful. Those the ferries are so comfy.
Yeah, look, it was only €48 per person to do the ferry trip. Look, as we described it when we went to Split, or Hvar, I should say, they're so comfortable, air conditioned, bar facilities, the chairs and seats are way, way better than airline seats.
You can fly in, though. There's an international airport at Dubrovnik as well.
And it's only about 15 mile from the airport. It's only about 15 mile or 24K from Dubrovnik. You can either hire a car once you get to the airport, or catch a taxi, or
there's a shuttle bus.
There's a shuttle bus as well. Probably the shuttle bus is about $8 Australian, But the thing is, the big tip here is
If you're staying in the old
if
city,
you're staying in the old city, find out off the people who have the accommodation which is the best gate to enter the city because of the stairs. And there's about, I think there's 3 or 4 gates. So depending, if you get
yes, if we had gone in the Pillay gate, for instance, we went in, I can't remember the name of the one, the gate we went in. If we had gone in the other gate, we would have had to have walked up about 300 stairs to our apartment.
Yeah.
Whereas it turned out we didn't have to do quite that many. In fact, we didn't do any. Here's another hint. We paid this guy €20 and he carried our suitcases, both of them, for us to our apartment and up the stairs to our apartment, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep,
that was certainly worth it. So yeah, we got a taxi from the ferry terminal to the gate that we needed to go to, and then we had that help. Now our apartment was in one of the highest sort of areas in Dubrovnik, in the old city.
Yeah. We booked it through Secret Orange by Dew Homes, which is DUHOMES.
Yeah.
Our apartment was quite close to the highest part of the wall, as you said. So we had 300 steps to descend to where
to the main area.
Yeah, to where the action was, which is basically, they call it the stratum, which is the main street.
But our apartment was double story. It had like a full kitchen. It had a piano. Like, how? I just don't even. My head can't get how you would get a piano in there. People said, "Oh, they'd come over the balcony." I'm like, you don't understand. You have to look at the pictures. There's no way this piano's coming in. And then when you get to the apartment, you got to go up another flight of stairs to get the piano in. It wasn't a pull apart piano. It was a full piano.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Look, but the apartment itself was actually really modern.
Yeah.
The kitchen had everything in it. It was fabulous.
There's a washing machine there. No, it was great.
So yeah, the bottom floor basically had all the living area and the dining room and the kitchen, and then upstairs there was the bathroom
and 3 bedrooms.
So look, it was very large, and it had all the bells and whistles, and it had a little balcony.
It did have a lovely balcony. So we got there by ferry, got our taxi, got our guy to help us with our luggage, got to our apartment, very happy. That was one day. But the next day, this is what we came for, was actually, I was going to talk about the city walls, but what we might do is give people a bit of history first, do you think? It has a pretty interesting history. We're going to give you more history as well, as because we did a walking history tour. So you're just going to give us a bit of an overall feel of it now, and then we'll come back to some of the interesting stuff a bit later as well.
Yeah, there was probably 5 main events in the history. So, and it starts off with the pesky Venetians. The Merchant Republic took control of the coastal cities of Croatia by 1420, with the exception of the Republic of Ragusa. Now, Ragusa basically was the Roman name for Dubrovnik. They remained under Venetian rule for a period of 377 years. Now, this is the tricky part, because the Venetians really wanted to get into Dubrovnik because of its trade routes from there. So after the Crusades, Dubrovnik came under the sovereignty of Venice. So from 1205 to 1358, the pesky Venetians got in there. To execute the crusade, the Pope, the Catholic Pope, approached the Venetians for their ships to transport their army to the Middle East, but the Pope couldn't afford the ships. So Venice gave the Pope the ships for nothing, as long as the Crusaders took over Dubrovnik and gave it to the Venetians. So that was how the Venetians basically got in to Dubrovnik. And as I said, they were there for about 150 years. Now, after the Venetians, we had the Ottoman Empire, and this was around the 1500s. In the days Ottoman ruled much of Eastern Europe, but did not rule Dubrovnik, the shrewd leaders of Dubrovnik made a deal with the Ottomans that for a small annual fee, Ottoman would protect Dubrovnik. Through a tribute agreement, the Republic guaranteed itself security, autonomy, and prosperity. The annual tribute and its terms increased and varied over the years. The agreement allowed the Republic to continue to trade with both east and west. So basically, they just paid for protection, and that worked for them really, really well. The guy Branko, which did the walking tour, he explained how the Croatian diplomacy was basically famous. So that was better than basically fighting them. Then, actually, in 1667, the Dubrovnik earthquake. The entire city was almost destroyed, and around 3,000 to 5,000 people were killed. 3/4 of all public buildings were destroyed. The sponsor and the rector's palace were the only city buildings that survived the natural disaster. Now, this is where the tricky parts comes in again. Both Venice and the Ottomans offered help after the earthquake, but Dubrovnik hierarchy rejected the offers, concerned that they might decide to stay.
Well, they also thought if they see how bad it was, that yes, they might decide to stay, and they'd learnt not to really trust anybody.
Yeah.
So that was the earthquake. Yeah.
So when they rebuilt the city, the hierarchy decided to limit the amount of ornamental architecture, abolishing balconies. You see the Venetian style green shutters, which you were blown away with when you realised what they were. So the old hierarchy, which would have been the rector and the councils, they thought, well, hang on. One, we don't want to have balconies and all that sort of thing, because obviously that probably killed people when the earthquake was on. But then they thought, well, thinking it through, we don't want people coming in and saying how wealthy we are. So then they decided to basically make all the buildings the same, which you look at them now, it's all Venetian architecture. It's absolutely beautiful. Now, the fourth event, basically in early 1806, the French army started out for Dubrovnik from Italy, while on the other side, the Russian disembarked in the Bay of Kotor and headed for the Dubrovnik Republic, planning to push back the French. In May 1806, the French, with around 800 soldiers, came before the city's walls, asking the authorities to open the city gates and give shelter to the soldiers so that they could continue their journey towards the Bay of Kotor. Realizing that they were caught between two major European powers, the aristocrats of Dubrovnik decided to meet the request of the French. Now, this is where it got tricky. Laurenson, French general, issued a proclamation accusing the Dubrovnik Republic of violating its neutral status, which was an excuse for taking possession of Dubrovnik.
So they asked to go in, and then they said, you let us in, you made a mistake. Well,
that's against your treaty. On the 31st of January 1808, General Marmont abolished the Republic. All governmental bodies were dissolved, and the French consul was put in charge of the Dubrovnik area administration.
Mm-hmm.
So the French basically shafted him.
Mm-hmm.
And probably the last, which was, when you find out the full story of this, it was terrible. In September 1991, the Yugoslav People's Army, the leader of the leaders of Montenegro, bombed Dubrovnik to ensure Montenegro's territorial integrity, to prevent ethnic clashes and to preserve the social Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. Basically, what happened was around 1990, Slovenia and Croatia decided they wanted to get out of Yugoslavia, which was their right to do under the treaty, that if they had a referendum that said that the people wanted to get out of Yugoslavia, they should have been able to do it peacefully. But because Serbia basically trolled most of the army and also the finances, which is why the other countries wanted to get out, they said no. And poor old Montenegro, which is only tiny even today, they stuck with the Serbs. So the Serbs decided that, well, we're going to come in, we're going to take over Dubrovnik. And of course, there was that 5-year war, and it was just terrible. And it took them 10 years to rebuild Dubrovnik. And
And they actually bombed inside the centre of the old city with the World Heritage Site, which is an absolute taboo.
Yeah.
And they did a lot of bombing in there, but it was a pretty bad time. So.
And actually, when you actually see the roofs, the red tiles of the roofs from the city walls, we were really surprised at first when we didn't take into account the fact that they'd been bombed, that there were so many new ones. But that just shows you how bad the bombing was. So,
all right, can we move on now?
If it's something you feel
I do, because we want to talk about the fun stuff in Dubrovnik.
Sure.
Yes. Everyone's heard of the city walls, and I was just so excited to be going to do these city walls. Now, take into account I don't like heights, and I've got a bit of a dicky leg, and so nothing like setting yourself a challenge. Now, you can buy your tickets to the city walls online, or you can buy them, you can line up and get them there. Once again, it's one of those things that the earlier you go, the better. They open at 8 o'clock in the morning, so you buy your tickets. I think they were €35, were they, each? I think there's 3 or 4 different entrances that you can actually go into the city walls. We took the main entrance, that is, near right down at the main street in Dubrovnik, and off we went. So we started up a really steep staircase. That's where you start at the bottom to get up to the top. And I'm like, oh, here we go. And then I realised later on, I actually had a look, there's 1,080 steps around the whole wall.
The whole place is so unique. You've got no idea how impressive it is.
Well, I just was about to say, most people I feel would know, but the whole city is surrounded by the original walls that were built 1,400 years ago.
Well, I've got it here, built between the 13th and 17th century. So that's how long it was. The length of the wall is 1,940 metres, or 6,360 feet. The height is 25 metres, or 82 feet.
And I would argue that there's places that are higher than 25 metres. When you're around on the ocean side, there's that sheer drop down to the ocean. But these original walls, you can walk around the whole thing. You don't have to get down. There's been no bridges. It's the original walls all the way around the city, isn't it?
Yeah, look, it's amazing. Now, I'll give you a little bit of a history on the walls. Refugees from destroyed towns such as Epidaurus fled to what became the defensive citadel of Dubrovnik. The walls were reinforced by 3 circular and 14 quadrangular towers, 5 bastions, 2 angular fortifications, and the large St. John's Fortress. Land walls were additionally reinforced by 1 larger bastion and 9 smaller semicircle ones. Like the casement, which is basically the holes that you could shoot cannons out of and that sort of thing, at Fort Boga, the oldest preserved fort of that kind in Europe. There was a moat that ran around the outside section of the city walls, which were armed by more than 120 cannons, and this provided superb city defence capabilities.
Well, what they used to do is they used to put the drawbridge down every day, and people go out, and then at a certain time they would call everyone back in and put it up.
Yeah, they'd ring bells.
Yeah.
And so if you didn't get back by that time, you didn't get back in.
It is impressive to look at, and I did take, as you can imagine, as I always say, lots of photos. So this is episode 116. There'll be a link in the podcast player you're listening on now. Go and have a click on that and have a look just how high some of these walls were and just some of the views that you got. We started it on a beautiful morning. There wasn't a breath of wind, so it was just the perfect day to start. And where we started at that main gate, the first thing you see is a view over the Adriatic and that other fortress that we're going to talk about a bit later.
Yeah, St. Lawrence.
Yeah, St. Lawrence Fort. And don't be worried. I mean, we did have a friend go who was terrified of heights and she couldn't even look up. I am a bit frightened of heights, but I just didn't go up the tower bits that you did, and I stayed away from any of the really high edges if I had to. Like, you want to get close enough to have photos and things, but you do need to have a fair bit of fitness, like a reasonable.
Was it challenging?
Yes.
Yeah. It is a little bit challenging when you're walking down and you're walking up the stairs. But there's probably about 4 exits that from the tower, so that if you are a little bit concerned,
You can get out.
you'll
But I was
find a way to get down.
well. Once we went halfway, I was like, we could go out now, and I'm like, no, I've got to finish this.
Well, I think the other part of it too is that the sights from that wall along the Adriatic are just unbelievably
It is,
outstanding.
yeah. It's one of my favourite things I've ever done.
And the
was
water's so
was
clear, and you can
beautiful.
see everything, and you're 25 meters up,
Yeah, at
and
least.
and there's a small beach on the seafront side, and there was a guy swimming there. Remember that?
But
There
also
is,
there's cafes along the
yeah,
way,
there's
and
cafes,
there's
yeah,
a couple of cafes. So obviously on top of one of the towers, they've set them up now and you can buy cold water, have coffee, and then there's also some toilets as well
yeah,
along the way. There's plenty of places to stop and rest. There are some sort of stairways, walkways that are basically one person at a time because they're the original, right? So you don't want to be caught in a group of people. You need to either wait for them to go, or you go first and then get to the area where there's obviously, I guess, what they'd call terraced areas where they would have more soldiers, and where you can the lookouts, I guess, is what you'd call them. So there's areas for you to rest. There's areas where you definitely go downstairs. So when you get sort of maybe a third of the way around, you come to the port area, and I was thinking, how's this going to work? So basically, the city walls do a bit of a U shape,
yeah,
and they go in around the old port area across the top of the port. And you're not as high then; you're not at your 25 meters, and so then you've got a beautiful view back over the. Well, we're talking about views over the Adriatic, but don't forget the views over the old city as well. You know, you're so close to some of those church steeples that you felt like you could touch them. And then as you're walking around the port, you're looking straight down over the old the port area, and it's so pretty there as
yeah,
well, isn't it?
yeah,
And the little boats bobbing around and people hopping on the ferries and that sort of thing. And then when you get around to the other side of the port, I think this is where you need to, take some deep breaths, get yourself ready for the last sort of hurrah, because it's basically mostly uphill, up or upstairs from there, because you're going back up to the highest part
yeah,
of the walls. And on one side you've got like inland, and you can see up the mountain, and then you've got all the orange terracotta roofs of Dubrovnik Old City. As I said, the church steeples, you can see the Walk of Shame stairs. It's just so pretty. It's no wonder they made Game of Thrones there. Like, it is just picturesque, right?
yeah,
Medieval, fairy tale, all that stuff. It just but it can't be real, is what you keep telling yourself. This cannot be
yeah,
real.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
you know it is, because
yeah,
they wouldn't build anything like that now. And then as we get sort of, if you do it into a square, we're on the final corner, and when we turn, we're heading back to where we're going to get out. That is the tallest turret on the
yeah.
whole wall.
Yeah, that's St. John's Fort.
Okay, and that's another scene on Game of Thrones. And then you get to see where our apartment was as well,
Yep.
and also the tennis court. There's a tennis court there that you can see.
A basketball too.
Sorry, you're right. A basketball court, yes, a tennis
Yeah,
court.
so
Yes,
the basketball court is like
random.
it's just
Two
unbelievable.
sides of the basketball court are the ancient city walls.
Yeah, and then and then on one of the other sides is basically you're looking straight out into the Adriatic Sea.
I know.
And that's all glassed in.
Yeah.
Like it's incredible.
It is incredible. You take your time. It did take us, look, what we're talking about, 2 hours, I think.
Yeah.
It was getting sort of quite warm as well. It's another reason to go early, is it does get quite warm in Dubrovnik, especially in summertime. And the crowds were pretty good. We didn't have any trouble with
I think
people.
my advice to people would be a little bit like Plevitsi Lakes.
Yeah.
Go as early as you can.
Yeah. Well, they open at 8.
All right, yeah. Go as early as you can. Get in front of the crowds.
But have your ticket beforehand, because if you go at 8, you still got to line up to buy tickets.
Sure. Yeah. Or you go around sunset.
Go the last 2 hours that it's open.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's highly recommended.
And you'll need to keep your ticket with you, because they check it on your way around at the other entrances. To make sure that you haven't just sort of come up. They make sure that you've got you keep your ticket with you. And the other thing I would say is be prepared for when you finish to be quite like on a high, obviously. but then there's quite a steep descent to get back down to the town as well, and you might be a little bit worn out by then. But like it was an incredible experience, even better than what I imagined. Like you can't imagine this. There'd be anything like this in the world. You'd probably think you're like I don't know how to
Well,
explain
I
it.
think the only thing that you could possibly compare it to, well, the world's a big place. The
We
places
have been
that we've
everywhere.
been,
Yes.
the places that we've been, I think, which did you prefer, Dubrovnik or Split with the Diocletian
Well,
Palace?
oh yeah, I'm not going to say. I don't know which one. They all have, as you're saying. But I guess what I'm trying to say is to walk around the city walls like this is so unique.
Sure.
Like there's no, I don't know that there's anything else like that in the world.
No, and it's so well preserved. It's almost like being there.
Sure. Well, that's what I'm saying.
Well, you are there, but it's almost like being there.
Well, that's how it would have been. Exactly. Yeah. They haven't changed it. They haven't modernised it. They have. I mean, they put on a few cafes, but they haven't put safety steps in or handrails to help you or any of that stuff. It's the original walking way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a fabulous day. I love that so much. So go and check out the photos at Beach Travel Wine, episode 116. So what we decided to do the next day was, look, we do this most cities we go to. We decided we were going to do a city walk, a walking tour. And we chose the history one, of course, because you're walking around looking at these incredible buildings and you need to know about them, don't you? That's how I feel. Yeah.
Well, otherwise you're just looking at buildings.
Yeah, you don't.
Without knowing what the history of it was. Yeah. But yeah, incredible.
So we met our tour guide, Branko, at the main gate on the main street there, didn't we? And without going into, too many morbid details, Branko gave us a story of his involvement in the Homeland War. He was a 9-year-old boy and he and his family had to escape where they were living, had to go through a 2-kilometre underground tunnel that was full of mud and water with only about, 10 centimetres of air, and took them, hours and hours to get through just to survive. And, like he's telling us this story of survival and, we're talking only 30 years ago, which is pretty incredible that he's actually gone through that. So his history, his knowledge of how this country works and how Dubrovnik is now and what it's been through really added to our walking tour. And I'm going to put a link to this walking tour because it was one of the best ones we've ever done. I'm going to put it in the show notes, but I'm also going to link it in the podcast description on the player you're on now, so you can click on that and just, because there's pictures and all sorts of stuff with that walking tour as well. Just go and have a look at that. So we started at the gate and we headed out the gate.
Yeah, but just across from the city walls, we mentioned it before, there's St. Lawrence Fort. All right, now the St. Lawrence Fort is 37 metres high, straight up a cliff.
Yes.
How they built it, I don't know.
And this is separate to the city walls, that's impressive.
What happened was the story has it, the Chronicles of Ragusa reveal how the fort was built within 3 months, and from then on constantly reconstructed when the Venetian ships arrived. But this was built because they got a whisper that the Venetians were going to come and they were going to build a fort on this site, which would overlook the main gate thoroughfare into Dubrovnik. So when the Venetians arrived and they saw this, what appeared to be this fully built fort, but it was really just the facade to start with. Basically, they fooled the Venetians and the Venetians just left.
So what they'd done is they built this fort quite fortified at the front, but it had nothing behind it. But they couldn't see that.
Yeah. So often called Dubrovnik's Gibraltar is the fortress outside the western wall opposite the Pillay Gate.
Yeah.
So in the Pillay Gate, as I said, that had the drawbridge and that was the main gate to come into.
And Branko told us that Pillay means gate. So it's the gate.
Okay. That's right. I forgot that. That's true. Yeah. But look, it is so impressive.
But even the Pillay Gate's impressive.
But the city walls walk, that payment of the €35 does include St. Lawrence Fort.
Entry into that.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So that's where we started.
Yep. Then we headed down through the Pillay Gate and gave us some info on the the round bastions and the fortification of the walls, and how they made some of them round, because if cannonballs hit that, it's not, unlike a flat, it sort of absorbs the energy more, and it's stronger. So we got all that. We had a bit of a quiz, didn't we? We didn't do very well on the quiz.
No, in fact, I thought I was really, really clever, and I think I answered 2 questions, and both questions, the answer was the opposite.
Yes,
so, anyway, but as you walk into the gates, the first thing you see is this huge fountain.
Now, we're on the main street at this stage.
This is, Strada.
So you come in through the Pillay Gate on the main road, the main thoroughfare of the old city of Dubrovnik, and to your left is the entrance that you go up to the city walls, and right in front of that is this massive fountain, which is so impressive.
Yeah, now they call it, it's the big Ono, it's an Onofrio. So Onofrio fountain. They call it the big one because there's a small one at the other end of the Straden. So it was built in 1438 to mark the finish of the construction of the city water supply system. It is decorated with 16 mascarons, and these are carved stone grotesque faces with water spouts coming out of their mouths.
And you can drink the water from there, Pete. You can fill up your water bottles.
Yeah. And everybody does it. And it's in a little bit of a square, and it's actually, what was the name of that, the American hamburger place? It was...
Hard Rock Cafe.
Yeah, Hard Rock Cafe is right next to it. So if you fancy a hamburger, and well, anyway, there used to be statues representing different animals. Today, the dog statue can still be seen. The only one that survived the great earthquake of 1667. So
it's a round. It's like a big rotunda,
it's bloody huge,
and it's got a dome roof on it. Yeah.
And then on that dome roof, there used to be the statues of the animals.
Oh.
But look, very impressive. Now we've talked a little bit about the stratum. Now, the limestone paved pedestrian street runs some 300 metres through the old town.
From one side to the other. So from the Pillay Gate through to the port, really.
Yeah. Now, the site of the present-day street used to be a marshy channel which separated Ragusa from the forest settlement of Dubrava before it was reclaimed in the 13th century. Its current appearance was for most part created following the 1667 earthquake. Following the earthquake and a large fire which broke out immediately afterwards, the Republic of Ragusa passed a law which specified the layout of future residential buildings constructed in the city. The city's fathers didn't want the Turks or the Venetians to know how bad the earthquake was. So
there was a little church there too, wasn't there?
On the left-hand side of the wide pedestrian street, there is a small church of Saint Saviour, built in gratitude for sparing the city in an earthquake that struck the area in the 1500s. So there's, they talk about the earthquakes, so you're just at they're just
nothing.
Like traffic,
the big one, little one. So you've got the Pillay Gate, you've got the entry to the city walls, you've got the fountain, and then you've got the small church. Now I've got a gorgeous photo of a priest throwing food in the air for the pigeons, and the pigeons are sort of flying. It's one of my favourite photos that I took in Dubrovnik.
Yeah, well, I remember you taking it.
Yeah. So make sure you go to Beach Travel Wine, click the link in the podcast player you're listening on to it, and have a look. Now, one of the things that Branko also told us about was the pharmacy, the old pharmacy that's been going. Like we don't know if it's the oldest pharmacy. What I think he said was it's the oldest pharmacy still in use,
operation.
Still operating today.
Still in continuous operation. It was established by the Franciscan monastery.
So this is right next to the little church, isn't it?
Of the Friar Minor in 1317. It is located on the left-hand side of the stratum, just through the Pillay Gate.
Yes.
The pharmacy was used by the Franciscan monks to treat the brothers as well as the citizens of Dubrovnik. Now, basically, it's a normal pharmacy. It sells all the modern pharmaceuticals and that sort of thing, but it still does sell some of the cures of back in the day.
Golden day,
Yeah, so yeah, that's incredible. And then across the road from that, which is up a street, and it's was what they say the world's first orphanage. It opened in 1432. I try to sort of have a look at that.
Fact check it. Some of them say one of the first, but it was certainly the first in this area, in this part of Europe as well. So.
Yeah. So it was one of the first ever, but whether or not it was the first ever, who knows? Now, it is located in the heart of the old city, opposite the Franciscan monastery in Dubrovnik, Zoltaric Street, and the remnants of the church still can be seen today. A blocked-off doorway and window can clearly be seen with the inscription over the door, "My heart was hot within me while I was missing the fire burn." As many of the children ended up in the orphanage due to extreme poverty of their parents, to avoid shame of handing their children over to the orphanage, a small entrance space was created in the front of the building on which parents would place their children, and then by turning a wheel, the plate would then swing inside carrying the babies. Branko described it really well, very tragically, yeah, it must have been awful back in the day. And the Benedictine nuns basically kept the kids till they were about 6.
And then they'd adopt them out. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, further along, as you go further along the Straten, you'll come across some palaces. Now, the first palace we saw was the Rector Palace. That used to serve as the seat of the rector of the Republic of Ragusa between the 14th century and 1808. Now,
this is one of the only ones that didn't get destroyed in that big earthquake.
Yeah. So. And that was also 1808 was when the French came.
They're beautiful old buildings.
Now, the actual rector, now this was an interesting fact, was elected by the Dubrovnik aristocracy.
So a rector is like the mayor, right?
No, the DJ,
So the leader of the city.
Yeah. Now, the rector was who ruled the Republic of Dubrovnik together with the major and minor councils and the Senate. He was elected by the major council, and his term of office was only 1 month.
That's one of the questions you got wrong.
Yeah. I said for life. So, in order to prevent any abuse of power, eligibility was every 2 years.
So what you're saying is the leader, the king, the rector, whatever you want to call him, you could only be there for a month, yes, and then once you've done a month, you couldn't be back in for another 2 years. So what they did was they were trying to deal with corruption.
Correct.
So you come in, you get jobs done, and then you're out and someone else comes in. So you don't have enough time to paying people bribes and that sort of thing.
And doing people favours and all the rest of it. Now, what Branko did say, because we sort of said, what can you get done in a month? But what they would do is they'd pre-plan everything so that basically when they got in there, it just happened.
Okay.
So I thought it was actually pretty smart.
And then there was the sponsor palace.
Now that today,
it's beautiful, isn't it?
It's absolutely beautiful. There's beautiful statues, paintings, and handmade carriages. It's just amazing.
Yeah, you can go in there and have a really good explore.
Now the other palace, the major palace, which survived the earthquake, that's called the Sponsor Palace, which is Sponza Palace, has served a variety of public functions, including as a customs office and bonded warehouse, the Mint, the Army, Treasury, Bank and School. The rectangular building with an inner courtyard was built in a mix of Gothic and Renaissance style between 1516 and 1522. The palace's atrium served as a training centre and business meeting place. To me, the sponsor and the courtyard and atrium just blew me away. It was absolutely beautiful. So
big open space, that atrium inside, wasn't it? It was really nice. So, and there was a very relaxed atmosphere in there too. There's a lot of people out in the main street, but once you get inside there, it was just really beautiful.
Now, basically opposite the
Sponsor one.
sponsor and the rector's palace, because they're quite close.
Yes.
And so on, adjacent to them is the Lusa Square. So St Blaise Church is located on Lusa Square.
So we're now down the other end of the main area. So we've gone in and out looking at the orphanage and the other bits and pieces, and now we've come out the other end where this church is, St Blaise's Church, and his statue. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can actually see the spike of this church on the Old City Walk. The Walls Walk. Yeah.
In February 1349, a month after the Black Death had arrived in Dubrovnik, the Great Council decided to build a Romanesque church dedicated to St Blaise as head and protector of the city. As the plague killed many heirs and executors, the council further decided to use some of the properties that had reverted to the states as funds for building the church. The current church was built in 1715 by a Venetian architect and sculptor Marino Grappelli on the foundations of the medieval church, which, though it survived the earthquake of 67, burned down in 1706. Now, there's a bit of a legend of the old St Blaise. His feast day is the 3rd of February, and the story goes that St Blaise saved Dubrovnik from the attack by the Venetian forces back in 971. Venetian warships had dropped anchor around the ancient city walls on the eve of the 3rd of February. A local priest walked through the streets to his parish church, the Church of St Stephen. When he arrived, he was surprised to find the door open. He entered with trepidation. Before him stood a man dressed as a bishop, mitre on his head and the staff in his hand. "Address your city fathers. The Venetians plan to attack," whispered the old man. "Please identify yourself to me," asked the priest, to which the old man replied that his name was Blaise. Now, you see all around the city walls the St Blaise flags. It's a white background with gold trim, and it's got basically SB, and they're all along the city walls, and it's pretty amazing.
Now, can I just jump in here? I know you want to do the harbour area and you've got all your history stuff done, but I feel like we're not really giving this place a lot of credit. Like we're doing the main history, but look, just wandering around these streets, every 50 metres less, there's a little walkway off the main street. And that goes up, on one side it goes up 300 stairs, on the other side it goes all around these little cobblestone streets. You can wander around these gorgeous little streets for hours. There's restaurants, there's bars, there's cafes, there's shops.
There's fashion.
Oh, look, it is just walking around. I mean, these are the big guns, right? But I actually preferred just exploring and finding those little places. And when we're at our apartment, our landlord said go down to this street for breakfast. That's the best street. And we did that. And there's this one street just one block in from the main area, all the way along. There's these little cafes all set up at breakfast time, and it was just so there's beautiful plants and flowers and vines all over the beautiful cobblestones and the brickwork and the stone. There's so many stones in this place. It's just gorgeous, isn't it?
Oh yeah, like there's no doubt about it. And we actually remember off that street where we had breakfast, just 2 streets along, there was the little supermarket. So that if you do want to buy a $5 quality bottle of wine, or you want to get some food to cook in your apartment, sort of thing.
There was a bakery we found as well. I don't know. I think it's one of the prettiest places in Croatia as well. Just those little streets, because the stairs go up so steep. When you look up, every little and of course there's apartments like where we were staying in. All the apartments have got the flower boxes out, and they've got the front of their little houses decorated. It's so pretty. It's really quaint as well. So it's not just the great big history things. It's these gorgeous little cottage feel as well. I
and
would say.
of course all the apartments and that sort of thing are the original
Sure.
buildings.
France. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but then when you go inside,
They're modern. Yeah.
yeah, well, the one we went into, we were blown away. We just opened the door and went, "The hell is
And
this?"
then next thing you go up a side street and you come to a big plaza, an open sort of square where there's markets on. And there was that market there. There was a fresh fruit market that day. You just don't know what you're going to find exploring the street. So I would say definitely do a walking tour and do the city walls, but take the time just to wander around the streets as well, because you'll be so amazed at what you find. I know you're going to come to it, but I want to say it now. I'm sorry, I'm going to muck your order up, but we were just wandering around and we came across that staircase, which is Cersei's Walk of Shame from the Game of Thrones. Now, I'm not a big Game of Thrones girl, but it was actually quite impressive to come across it. The staircase was stunning. You go all the way up to that church up the top where there's that other open square, and there's restaurants up the top of that as well. And our guide Branko told us all about how they closed the city down and how they made all the locals happy by paying them off so they could film that scene of Game of Thrones. And we sat right at the bottom there. There was a restaurant, and on our first night, and we had dinner there, just sitting. I got some really fun photos, especially of you with your arms in the air, just sitting there at the bottom of the Walk of Shame stairs. It was just, that just blew me away. I just love that. So, and then somewhere else there was another staircase that we came across as well. So you just find all these things, and it is mind blowing. It's so pretty and so impressive. Yeah.
Yeah, and look, on top of the stairs was filmed on top of the Jesuit stairs.
Yes, that's what they're called.
By the St. Ignatius Church of Dubrovnik.
Okay, so
all that area.
I loved it so much. Now, once you came down from that, though, there is, and we did mention it on our city walls walk, there is the old port area or harbour area, yeah?
Yeah.
And this is where you can hop on a boat and head out to one of the botanic gardens on one of the islands and do your day trips from and that sort of thing. But it's quite protected, and there's quite some famous buildings or well-known buildings as part of this harbour area as well, isn't there?
Yeah, so because being the harbour area was the least defensive area with the city walls.
Yeah, so it was the easiest that people could get into.
So what they did is they built other forts on the land side. So basically, we came down the stairs from the city walls, and you walk out this archway, and you're just blown away. So the most prominent parts of the harbour are the three arches of the large arsenal built in the late 12th century and enlarged in the 15th century. The harbour was also the oldest shipyard and a place where large boats were repaired. The Fisherman Gate, built in 1381, stands eastward from the Great Arsenal, and the old Tower of St. Luke's protects the harbour in the east, and the harbour entrance is encircled and guarded by the Revelin Fort. Constructed in 1476, the old Ponte Gate, which is obviously the gate on this side, on the harbour side, is situated westward from the large arsenal. The city wall, built at the same period, leads from the gate to St. John's Fort. The fort houses the aquarium on the ground floor and the Maritime Museum on the first and second floor now. So, yeah, this St. John's Fort is huge. It's part of the city walls. And then there's like a jetty that goes out, which they use as a jetty and also a breakwater. And then there's another breakwater to, again, protect from waves and wind and that sort of thing. And then between the two forts, they used to have a huge chain that used to go across to stop boats entering. The Revelin Fortress is on the land side. It's not part of the city walls. It is massive. I mean, it is truly massive. And
it's known now for nightclub, isn't it? That's what it is.
So basically, it's got the biggest
paved terrace area.
Yeah, paved terrace area in Dubrovnik. And so they use that for events and that sort of thing. And then inside, what they've done is they've renovated inside the Revelin Palace as a nightclub. And apparently during this summer festival, all the best DJs, European DJs in the world, come. It's a real big thing to play at the Revelin. But like the actual harbour area, to me, was my favourite part of it, and it was busy. You know, you've got all the cruise, not cruise ships, because
The ferries going in
the
and out.
ferries going in and out, and the fishing boats and that sort of thing. I just thought it was magical, and the tourists, not the tourists, the cruise boats, they're at a port which is about 20 minutes away.
So that's basically the old city, and you do a walking tour. You'll find out all the history, what all these buildings are, and then find your time to explore. As I said, was one of my favourite things to do. Now we're getting along in time, so we need to keep moving with a couple of other things that we did that highly recommend people do when they go to Dubrovnik.
Sure.
Now, one of them was I saw some friends of mine had been here to the cave bar, and we met some other friends, Kobe and Kev, in other places of Croatia, and we happened to be in Dubrovnik at the same time, and they mentioned the cave bar. So the cave bar is exactly what it sounds like. It's a 3-4 level bar that is in a cave.
Which is built into a cave, yeah.
There's a patio out the front, like a terrace.
Yep, seafood terrace.
Yeah, so you can seafront terrace, you can sit out there. It's part of the Hotel More, or More, however you want to say that. And you can get there. We got an Uber from the city, but you can get a bus. It's not that far. You can do that. And there's another just down from the hotel and the bar is basically like a eat street. It's full of restaurants that you can wander along and obviously pick what you want to eat there, and it's a little bit more upmarket, a bit more modern in that area around the hotel.
Well, it's a bit more on. It's really modern.
Everything compared to the old cities, probably very modern.
But the actual place, like I think it was bugger all to get there in a cab, so it's not far from the old city. And obviously, you just say the cave bar, and they know exactly what you're talking about. But we had to
go down like secret squirrel business, down different lifts. You go in, you go to that level, and go down one lift, and then you go around the corner and down another lift, and it's lit up with all these colourful lights, and the bar's on one level, and the seating areas are on all these different levels, and you just can go round and round. Like you said, 3 levels. I don't know how many. I reckon there was more. And then all of a sudden there's a waiter there with your drinks, and then they bring back more drinks. It was really impressive. And you can walk out. I've got a beautiful photo of that, but I've also got on our Instagram, I took some nice, really cool videos inside the cave bar, plus all the city walls and that sort of stuff. So if you go to Beach Travel Wine on Instagram, and up the top on the story highlights, click on Dubrovnik, because honestly, this is one of the most spectacular places you'll see. The city walls, the history tour, the harbour, and the cave bar,
Yeah. Well, the actual fit out of the cave bar is, I mean, so modern, so out.
But the walls are the original cave.
It's in a cave, but the actual fit out and the lighting in the caves that obviously accentuate the rocks and all that sort of thing. It's incredible.
Yeah, I love that. And so definitely go to the cave bar. And if you can go at sunset, even better, because that's when it's nice out on the waterfront terrace there. And then, sad story for our friend Kobe and Kev, they made this booking at the famous Panorama restaurant.
Yep.
Now, to go to the Panorama restaurant, you have to take a cable car. Now, you also have to book months in advance to get a booking. So they'd made the booking. Unfortunately, it was the wrong time for them, and so they gave us their booking, which was really generous. And we took the cable car. Now, the cable car is just outside the main gate, not the Pillar Gate, the other side gate, and the Northern Gate, I think it's called. We went under a little tunnel, and you buy your tickets, and then you hop on the cable car, and they're great big cable cars. The cable car,
32 people.
Yeah, well, the cable car station is very modern. And how long does it take to go up the top?
3.5 minutes.
Okay, so
to do the 405 meters.
Okay, so up you go to the top. Now, you don't have to go to the restaurant. If you don't want to, you can go up the cable car, and there are lookout points where you can actually take beautiful photos. Now, can you imagine, you're right up 400 meters high over the old city, the city walls, and the sea. Like, you have never seen a view like this in your life. It is unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah, well, there's actually a fort. The fort on top is called the Imperial Fort. The fort was built by Napoleon and was finished on his birthday, August 15th. So, Napoleon.
It's on different levels too. There's a few indoor areas, the restaurant, there's the outdoor terraces, And the reason that you book is so you can get one of the tables right on the edge of the
Which we
restaurant.
did. Which
Yeah.
we did.
Well,
Yeah.
thanks to Kobe.
Yeah.
And it was wonderful. It was like such a wonderful experience. We're talking to people around us. You could hear people's accents from all over the world as well. It was pretty unique experience up there. I love that. And it's also I remember this. It's where a lot of the adventure day trips start from, like the quad fours and that sort of stuff. They have a lot of the stalls and things up the top there.
Can I remember? Do I remember correctly? There was a skip line, like
A zip line. Maybe.
line?
I think you go to a zip line. That's what I mean. It's the adventure sort of side of things. It's where they all start from up there.
The food was great.
The food was great. The drinks was good. It was a little bit slow, but they were really busy. And it was a little bit windy, but and I was a bit unsure in the cable car. But
unsure, is that what they call it?
Yeah, that's screaming. Yeah. But that was a magical experience. And just as I said, looking over, and you could see the Revelin Fort, you could see St John's Fort, you could see the little island where the Botanic Gardens were, you could see the port area. There was a big pirate ship, that's one of the tourist things there, but it looks so real from up there, the great big wooden pirate ship going out to sea. I took a photo of that because my daughter always wanted to do that, and that's in the episode 116, the show note description, the one page we do to go with this episode. And then all the way out to basically the other port side as well. Truly, truly beautiful. If you don't get a seat at the restaurant, that's okay. It's worth doing, but you still need to go up the cable car. Now, it's not cheap.
No, the cable car was €56 for both of us, but I have found out that you can catch a Bolt or an Uber up there, and it's much, much cheaper.
Yeah.
But it's part of the deal,
yeah. And I think you have to get a return. I don't know if you can get one way on that.
Yeah, when I say it's part of the deal, I think you've got to do the cable car because it is part of the deal.
It's the experience. It's the views.
That's what it is. Yeah. So, we were very, very, very lucky to be able to do that.
Yeah, that was wonderful experience. So that's very modern and looking over that old city, it's just such a great mix in Dubrovnik. It's one of my favourite places I've been, and there's just so much to see, and you just go. And now when you reflect back on what we did, you just really are blown away by it.
Well, what was the other? I can remember somewhere else you went that you really, really enjoyed.
I did enjoy that, yes. The Euro Cup was starting when we were in Dubrovnik. It started the second day we were there. And, of course, we like football, and we were in Croatia, so we wanted to barrack for Croatia, and they were playing Spain. So that was a bit hard because I am a Spanish supporter. It's Australia first for me all the time, and Spain second. It always has been. Then generally the Netherlands because they wear orange. I've only got that, which is. But now Croatia, because quick story: we at the Sydney Olympics, my kids came across a Croatian water volleyball team, and they were just the friendliest group of guys. And so we've always been a fan of Croatia because they were the friendliest athletes that we had at the Sydney Olympics when we were down there. But there was no way they were going to beat Spain. And we tried to find somewhere to go, and they were saying all the tables were reserved. So we found this dingy little Irish bar, like dingy is like a compliment. And they were like, it's one of those bars people are smoking inside, and I had to go home and wash my hair, my clothes. It was horrendous. And there was about 6 old blokes sitting there watching it, and I'm like, oh, here we go. And then all of a sudden these 4 Spanish guys come in. They've been out all day having a great time.
And they're all dressed in the Spanish colours.
Yeah, they had their Spanish football gear on. And so, Lyle was even chatting to them a bit in Spanish, and we were having a nice chat, and they were all there for their birthdays. And
yeah, it was their 50th birthday.
Yeah. So
they were high school. They went to high school together. And, they were the nicest guys and funny.
They were funny. So and Spain won 3-0. It was a bit sad for Croatia, unfortunately.
But our Spanish friends, they were delighted.
They were very happy. So
then they started buying us drinks.
Yeah. People love Aussies watching football.
If you ever come across this Irish bar, and I couldn't find the name of it, but it had the cheapest drinks in Dubrovnik. It was fabulous. And it's not far from
St Blazes Church. It's just up from the main square.
So.
But after that we just wandered around the different alleyways and to find somewhere to eat, and
we had a tiger burger.
Yeah,
that was the name.
We just wandered around. You do that. There's just so many little places. So don't get caught just on that main drag. go for a bit of a walk and you'll find some really interesting places. It's actually where I bought T-shirts for all our grandkids as well, because I've been looking, and they were the best price and the best choice.
They were €10 each.
Yeah, the best choice that there was. So, but you had to find the little shops, right? That took a little bit of walking, and a little bit of finding and exploring, and that was one of my favourite things.
The quality was great, and
well, kids love them.
Yep.
Yeah, they were popular choice from Nana. So Lyle, your favourite place to have a glass of wine in Dubrovnik?
Oh, you'd have to say, we're talking the old town or the new town?
Dubrovnik. When we
I'm
our
going
4
to
days.
Caper.
Okay.
I'm going to Caper. That place blew me away. I've never seen anything like it.
Well, I am going to say, I would say the Panorama Restaurant. However,
it's funny because that's what I thought at first.
No, I'm actually going to say sitting at the bottom of
I know what you're going to say.
The stairs. Yeah, the walk of shame stairs, the Jesuit stairs. That I for some reason I just felt that was amazing to be able to sit there and have dinner right there. It was really cool. Yeah.
It was.
Yeah, for sure. One of my favourite things to do. So
what, have a glass of wine or have a glass of wine there? Both, yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah. Well, I hope you've enjoyed our Dubrovnik podcast. So there was a lot of history in there, but there is a lot of history.
Because that's what it's all about. It's history. Sure.
Yeah. And it just helps you enjoy it and understand the whole city a lot more if you understand why the walls are there and why some of the buildings are like they are as well. It makes it much more interesting.
Well, one thing that Branko, he did point out some shrapnel.
Yeah,
in the walls, which was after the Yugoslav army bombed, which is a bit sad.
All right, so we've got one more Croatian podcast coming up next.
Oh, yeah.
So we're off to another little island, and it was probably our favourite island, I would say. And we've got lots to tell you about that little place. So until next week, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from her.